Hello, hello. Welcome to the show. Nicole Holland here, and I'm so excited about today's episode. So, my guest today is the author of the #1 bestseller, Corporate Sponsorship in 3 Easy Steps, as well as the CEO of Sponsor Concierge and the founder of the Sponsor Secrets Seminar. Her sponsors include Microsoft, Epson, Wells Fargo, Dun& Bradstreet, FedEx, American Airlines, Staples, HealthNet, Marriott, IBM, and Walmart. I am so excited for the opportunity that you and I have to learn from this woman in today's masterclass because she's the foremost expert when it comes to sponsorship. And in fact, the founder of IHOP Restaurant says, if your goal is to be a success, Linda Hollander has paved the way for you. Linda Hollander, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
So excited to have you. So we're going to jump in today to sponsorships and how to get sponsorships and all of that. But I would love it if you could share just really briefly your story about how you wound up getting into this whole sponsorship gig in the first place, because it's not something that you had been trained on or that you had done in corporate, right? It's something that you just needed to figure it out, and you did.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, we'll go back to when I got the entrepreneurial bug like you did and like our listeners. I started a business with my best friend. Her name's Cheryl. And we met when we were 13 years old. And we knew that if we ever did anything together, it would be amazing. So we started a business together making shopping bags, the paper, plastic, canvas shopping bags that you see in the malls and at the trade shows. And it was great working with my best friend, knowing nothing about business. I was an art major. She was a cinema and film major. We made it into a multi-million-dollar business, got clients like Sears and Mattel and Nissan and Ocean Spray. And, it was just amazing. But before I started that business, I was not in a good place because I was living in this little rent-controlled apartment and not knowing how I was going to pay my bills, even though I was working, because I wasn't making enough at my job. And when I went down to the mailbox, I mean, my hand would literally shake when I opened that mailbox because I knew there were bills there I could never ever afford to pay. I was working with people I didn't like. I'm in Los Angeles, so I had to fight the traffic to get to the office. And, I had the soul and the fire of an entrepreneur, and my soul was absolutely crying out in that job. I mean, some days at lunch, I would just go down to my car and cry. So fortunately, and in my personal life, I was with an abusive man, and I stayed in that relationship for quite a few years because I had absolutely no self-confidence. But fortunately, one day I had an epiphany and I said, I don't want to be a victim anymore. I want my life to make a difference. So I fired my boss, I dumped the abusive boyfriend, and we started that business together. And 3.5 weeks later, I met my husband, who is a constant source of love and support. He had a 20-year-old cat when we met, so I knew he was a caring person. I knew he was a decent person. And all the good things in my life happened when I made that decision to strike out on my own. I was able to travel the world. I was able to move out of that little rent-controlled apartment and buy my first home as a single woman. But mostly what I loved doing in my business was coaching and mentoring, because people would come to the business. They wouldn't just order bags. They would say, how do I do sales? How do I do marketing? And because we were one of the only women-owned packaging companies in America, a lot of women business owners came to me. So one day I said, I want to start the Women's Small Business Expo. And the idea just took hold of me. I thought about it the first thing in the morning. I thought about it when I laid my head down on the pillow at night. But of course, you get this great idea, and then your second thought is, well, how am I going to pay for this? So that's when I started researching corporate sponsors. And I found out, oh my God, these angels will underwrite your event or your business or your speaking or your book and now your podcast and your web TV show and your YouTube channel and, all the social influencers. I work with them a lot. So My very first sponsors for my very first event were Bank of America, Walmart, and IBM. And after that, I got the ones that you talked about in the intro, FedEx and Staples and Epson and American Airlines and Health Net Insurance and Marriott Hotels. So it really made everything in my life possible. And what I want to talk to you about today and share with everybody watching is that sponsors can fund your dreams.
Amazing. And I'm super excited for that because I want sponsors to fund my dreams. And I know a lot of my listeners are super excited about that as well. And I just want to mention, too, to our listeners who are hearing us on the podcast, as Linda said, our viewers are seeing us face to face. So if you have the interest in watching this interaction, come on over to the NicoleHollandShow.com. This video is living on the show notes page, and you can also engage with us in the comments on the page. So, Linda, how on earth do we get those lifestyle sponsors? Like, I mean, I'm interested in all of it, but especially like American Airlines and Marriott. Like, these are companies that I imagine you use. Like, you are a fan, and you're a can you tell us how that happened? Like, how did you get these kinds of sponsors?
Okay, well, it's all about your demographics. Demographics are destiny with sponsorship. So, if your demographics are entrepreneurs, if your demographics are moms and parents or urban youth, you think about the daily lifestyle of your demographic. And I was lucky because I was part of my demographic. I was a woman business owner. And for everybody listening and watching, I'm going to be talking about women as examples, but the tips, the strategies that I'm going to give you for getting sponsors are universal for everybody. So think about that daily lifestyle. Let's just take the entrepreneur. Okay, they get up in the morning. They brush their teeth, they wash their hair, they get into a car, they have a banking relationship, they use credit cards. So all of they eat food, they drink beverages. So all of those are good categories for sponsors. So think about the definition. Let me give you the definition right now. This is a writer downer if you can write something. The definition of sponsorship is connecting a company to people who buy things. So that's what it's all about. That's what they're paying you for, to connect them with their core consumers. You think about entrepreneurs and what they buy and where they go on the internet and what they do. Then you'll start getting so many ideas for who could be your sponsor. And, by all means, go for the companies that you use and that you love. Those are called your love marks. But don't confine yourselves to those. Like Bank of America was one of my first sponsors, but that doesn't mean I only approached Bank of America. I approached Bank of America and all the other banks. So in that category, approach as many sponsors as you can. And let's talk about top tier and second tier, because what comes to mind is mostly top tier sponsors. When you're starting to think, okay, bank sponsors, and I love banking and financial. They asked Willie Sutton, why do you rob banks? And he said, well, that's where the money is, and that's still where the money is. So banks is a great category, and Bank of America is what's called top tier. But there may be a local community bank where you are that really needs you to get the word out about them. So that would be called a second tier sponsor.
Sorry, I'm over here writing it all down. I'm like, oh, okay. So what's the process then? Do you have, so you've got, a number of steps that you teach about how to identify your potential sponsors. And I think that even just in saying what you just did, the definition of connecting is connecting a company with people who buy things in their target demographics. And I love that demographics are destiny with sponsors. So that's definitely a tweetable as well. There's so much good stuff here. So when you identify your potential sponsors, what do you now need to do to actually attract and approach those sponsors?
Okay, so what you want to do is let's talk about attracting and approaching. So first of all, oh, I'm so sorry. Hold on. Okay, so sorry about that. Okay, so attracting your sponsors, you want to do what's called a sponsor proposal. And a sponsor proposal is basically your business plan for sponsorship. So you need an industry standard proposal because you're asking for money that you don't have to pay back. But in order to get that money, you have to send them a proposal. Now, the proposal talks about what you do. It has beaucoup benefits in there, and we could get into what the right benefits are for sponsors, because most people have no idea, and I had no idea what I was starting. So you've got the benefits, you've got, of course, the description of your demographic and the type of people that they can reach. You put testimonials in there, and then the last thing you put in your sponsor proposal is storytelling. You could put your story or the story of somebody that you've helped through the work that you do, because you want to make an emotional connection with your sponsors, because it's a human being that's going to sponsor you, not a company. There's a person in that company that's going to greenlight this. And I put in my sponsor proposal that I was in the poverty trap, that I was in abusive relationships. So, that's what you want to put in your proposal. Now, let's talk about contacting the sponsor. So once you have that proposal done, and we don't really recommend in my company that you contact your sponsors until you have your proposal. Because what if you contact them and they say, "Oh, Nicole, great, I want to sponsor you," and they say, "Send me the proposal," and you do not send it, your credibility does suffer. So you want that proposal. Now you want to contact those potential sponsors. So most sponsors like you to contact them by email. They've told me things off the record in the past 18 years while I've been doing this. And one of the things they've told me is they don't want to be surprised by a phone call. They want you to warm them up a little bit with an email and then phone them. So that's what I would recommend.
Great. Okay, so what is next? So we've got the proposal, and then we contact the sponsor. Actually, before we go further, did you want to go into the benefits of how we can make this really juicy and appealing to the sponsor?
Let's talk benefits.
All
Okay,
right.
because if this sponsor doesn't see benefits, you are not going to get sponsored. They have to see benefits in order to make an investment in you, and they're making an investment. So the benefits that most people think in sponsorship are what we call visibility benefits. I've gotten calls from people, and they think that if they put the sponsor logo on their website that they might get $1 million. Well, no, not so much. What it's all about right now is what's called engagement. People want to engage with brands. So visibility is good. Visibility is if you do an event, the signage at the event, the presence at the event is good. The website logo, fine, dandy. One of my clients gets paid when she sends an email out. She puts the sponsor logo. Another client does blogging and includes the sponsor in her blogging. So those are some benefits. Some really good benefits right now are social media. And not just a post here and there, but a whole campaign around social media with what we call snackable content. So for instance, if you're doing a marathon, you might profile one of the people who's doing the marathon and maybe profile the fact that, hey, a few months ago they were in the hospital and they were recovering from cancer, and now they're training for their first marathon. So you might have, something that, okay, first they couldn't get halfway down the block without collapsing, and then they trained a little more, and these were their challenges, and now they're going to do it. So some kind of human interest campaign is a great one. Email marketing is fabulous. You can include your sponsor in your email marketing. There's video. Video is great with sponsors, and video is a couple of things. You could put out your own videos, or you can distribute the sponsor's video, because every sponsor now has a video of some kind or another. We're not even running businesses anymore. I'm sure you would agree with me that we're running little media companies. That's kind of what's changed from the previous generation. Another really cool benefit that I've done, and all these benefits that I'm giving you are low cost but high perceived value. is an award presentation to your sponsors. And you don't have to do events. You can do this virtually, but if you do an event, like when I was with Citibank, what I did was they were giving me thousands of dollars. It was well in the five figures. I can't reveal the exact sponsor fee, but it was pretty good. So I bought an award and I custom printed it. And here's a writer down there too. Making a Difference Award. We called it the Making a Difference Award. And then at my event, we gave it to Citibank. They sent the company representatives, and we had a professional photographer take the photo. We distributed it to the media. A lot of media picked it up. But here's what Citibank did. They sent an email to their employees saying, we just won the Making a Difference Award. And the employees felt better about working for Citibank. And then when I went to their offices, that silly little cheap, inexpensive Fakakta award was displayed in the trophy case. So I got a lot of mileage out of that little $50 award that I bought for Citibank. And let's talk about, you want to talk about renewals?
I'd love to talk
Renewals
about
is
renewals.
really renewals is so juicy. Okay, the renewals, that's your cash machine in sponsorship. Renewals are when a company can fund you this year, the next year, and the next year. And that's what happened with Citibank. So with Citibank, they sponsor me for, I think, about four to 5 years. And that's amazing. And it was just because of things like that, really helping them connect with their core consumers as much as possible.
Great. So many of my listeners are in the media space, right? They're digital influencers, they're podcasters, they're podcast guests. They have a personal brand in addition to their company. Do you have any specific tips for those kinds of people who maybe they're not doing events, but they have they regularly Instagram, or they regularly put out blogs or podcasts, etc.?
Okay. Well, everybody thinks in the social influencer space, there's these magic numbers that when they get to so many followers, or, their numbers get to a certain place, then they can go out and get sponsors. I want you to go out immediately and try to get sponsors, because when I first got sponsors, I had absolutely no following. I had no experience. I'd never done an event in my life. I had my parents on my email list. At the time, email was like the big thing. So I had my parents on my list. I had my brother-in-law. If I could have put my cat on there, I would have. So start immediately. And it's not, the bloom is a little off the rose with social influencers, because it's not just about, oh, this person has this big following. It's relevancy. It's all about relevancy. And if your target market, like I said, matches the sponsors market, that's great. And sponsors are seeing a lot of viability now in the virtual space. So if you do webinars and Facebook Live and podcasts and YouTube and all that, you can do pretty well with sponsors. We all know about even animals could get sponsors. There's Manny the Frenchie. There's Grumpy Cat. Their net worth is over 20 million, and for an animal. So, it's all about the right, presentation and the relevance.
Amazing. So can you tell us about, like, expectation wise, because you want people to start immediately, which is super exciting, and that is like a if you're listening and this is for you, this is what you start doing immediately. There's Linda's, you know, call to action. So what is realistic to expect? So let's say we wanted to start with something that's relevant to our lifestyle, something we're using, but we're open to, for example, I fly a bunch of different airlines, but of the airlines that I fly from Buffalo, I prefer Delta. So like, let's say I want to see if Delta is going to sponsor me, or JetBlue, or whatever, right? Like, what are some of the what's the word, reality, like in my mind, my dream would be like, oh, they sponsor me and I get to fly for free, and I get to fly in first class, and I take pictures and I speak about it to my audience and so on. But what is the reality? Like, what are they really looking for, and what can we expect if we do a great sponsor proposal and we get a yes? Like, what kind of numbers are we talking about?
Okay, let's talk numbers. I'm going to generalize here because I don't know all of our listeners and viewers, but most of our clients get between 10,000 and $100,000 every year from each sponsor, and there's no limit to the amount of sponsors that you can have. So this could be quite lucrative. Now let's take that airline sponsor, because I've worked with two airlines. I've worked with American Airlines and I have worked with Southwest Airlines. And it was really interesting because it was a very different experience with each airline. With Southwest Airlines, they use a public relations firm, so you don't work directly with the brand. With American Airlines, I worked directly with that particular brand. And usually with travel sponsors, here's another writer downer. It's going to be an in-kind sponsorship, meaning that there's no cash that changes hands, but you're going to get a trading of benefits and services. And in-kind sponsorships are very valuable because, like you said, they are budget relieving. So if you fly Delta a lot, and here's a cool thing, if you want to fly out maybe a speaker for something, somebody to speak at an event, you could do that. You could get upgrades. You could go into the lounge. You could, and if I were, a social influencer, that's exactly what I would do. I would go into the lounge. I would be at the airport. I would be, filming into my camera and really making storylines out of, how I love that particular brand, what that particular brand has to offer my audience. So those are some things you can do. Like I said, if you do digital trainings, you can put a slide at the end that says this was made possible by this particular company. Maybe have a link that they could go to, maybe have some kind of an offer for them. A lot of times, what airlines and travel companies want to do, hotels, rental cars, all those things, is they want you to offer your audience maybe a discount or a coupon code where they can go and get a special discount or a special program or something. So that's another way that you can promote your travel sponsors.
Amazing. And stuff like that for business owners who are traveling, it's like, yes, as you said, the relieving the cost, like that adds up to so much. And that visibility
Yes.
and that, yeah, connection with the brand. I wanted to ask you something else about that, and it just escaped my brain. Um, okay, we can move on, and when it comes back, I'm gonna be like, Linda. Um, yeah, man. Okay, so with um oh, I know. So with something like that, how long does it usually take? Like what's the process? Is there a usual? Like what can people expect if they put their sponsorship proposal together and it's brilliant and it aligns with the brand and they're asking for example for in kind versus dollars? Um is there kind of a timeline that's normal?
I always tell people to start looking for sponsors 8 months to a year before they need the funding. And the reason that this is not a quick cash strategy. So if you need money like tomorrow, there's other ways to do it. But with sponsorship, it is a relationship business. So it takes a while to form relationships. Think of the relationships you have now, right now. They didn't happen in a week. Uh, so and sometimes you have to deal with the travel schedules of the people in the sponsorship department. They fly away on business a lot, they come back. There's a process where they review the proposals. You have a couple of conversations before you really have that deal in place. So I think 8 months to a year is a pretty good timeline, and the clock starts when you have your proposal, not when you have the idea. So, just kind of know, I get so many calls from people and they say, help, I'm doing this thing in 2 weeks and I need sponsors. And unfortunately, I cannot do anything for those people. So have enough lead time. The more lead time you have, the more successful you're going to be with your sponsors.
Amazing. Okay, so what else? So we've got here spotlighting your assets. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. You have assets and you have influence. And even if you're just getting started, and I work with people who were just getting started, because when I was getting started, like I said, I was working from my kitchen with a cat, this short little frizzy haired girl. And, I just had an idea in my head. I was selling something that didn't exist and I didn't even know if it had legs. And a lot of people wouldn't talk to me. I was too small. But there were people who talked to me and mentored me. And I thank God for them because sponsorship changed my whole entire life. So even if you're just getting started, you have influence. So really spotlight your assets with your influence. Your assets include what you do. If it's a podcast, if it's a book, if it's a speaking tour, if it's an event, if it's your business, if it's your nonprofit. And we haven't even talked about the nonprofit space because the really savvy nonprofits have mastered the art of corporate sponsorships. Think about Susan G. Komen. Think about the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Think about St. Jude's. And one sponsor equals thousands of donors. So in the nonprofit space, your asset, and is called cause marketing. That's the writer downer, cause marketing. People like to buy from companies that give back to the community, which is why when you buy from the Target stores, they give part of the money to Feeding America because Feeding America feeds kids so they don't go to school hungry. Because when you're hungry and your basic needs are not met, you're not going to learn. So that's a perfect example of heart and smart. So that's what nonprofits have to offer. So what you have to offer as an asset is your reach, your extended reach. How many people can you reach? And if you don't have a big extended reach, use what we call borrowed credibility. Hook up with a bunch of people who do have fan bases and pull them together. So then you do have a great fan base to start, because that's what I did. I made friends with people who had more of an extended reach, more of a following than me. And eventually I built my own following, but we did it together. We kind of co-created things. So those are what we call assets in the sponsor world.
Fantastic. All right. And so many people, I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, when they're thinking about sponsorship, they maybe are thinking, oh, well, I don't want to ask for too much. I want to make sure that, it's reasonable. Can you talk about numbers? What's reasonable? What's too much? What's not too much? Because I believe you're an advocate for people not selling themselves short.
Yes, absolutely. And not asking for enough money in the sponsor game can hurt you. I see a lot of proposals where they're asking for $250 in sponsor fees. Now, you're pitching a person who is really busy, who basically doesn't even make decisions on their own, because sponsorship is a team sport. So this person you're approaching has to check with a boss, has to check with their colleagues and their team and maybe the people who work under them. And is it worth their time if you're asking for $250? Absolutely not. So we want you to start at a real, high range, usually in the five figures. It's hard to generalize, but I kind of see what people do and I have a feel for what they could charge as a sponsor fee. But if you start high, then they can negotiate. You could decide, okay, do I want to negotiate this price or not? But if you start low, it's absolutely going to hurt you because you're telling that sponsor that you have nothing of value. And a lot of people think, well, I'll start low on my sponsor fees and then the next year I'll raise it. And the next year, no, it doesn't really work that way. You can't double and triple it the next year. You can raise it incrementally, but you're not going to double and triple and quadruple your sponsor fees. All I can give you is a range, because I would have to talk to somebody individually to do what we call the sweet spot valuation of how much they should charge on their sponsor fees. But I'm saying usually in the range of, usually we do 4 levels. One level is at $10,000. One level is at $25,000. One level is at $50,000, and one level is at $100,000. So I'll explain the different levels now, and then just keep in mind that I'm generalizing here. The first level is for those visibility benefits that we talked about. Is signage at the event, logos on the website, things like that. The second level is for connections and engagement. So at that level, we add contests. we add those award presentations, we add press releases, we add all kinds of things that have attention and engagement. At the $50,000 level, we add media and traditional media as well as the digital platforms, because everybody thinks that traditional media is dead, and it is far from dead, and sponsors are very traditional. So they like traditional media, broadcast, radio, television, and terrestrial, print media, all that stuff is not dead. So we have that in the 50, and then at the $100,000 level, we have what's called naming rights. Naming rights. So when you go, I'm here in Los Angeles, so when we go to a sporting event, we go to the Staples Center, and that's what's called a naming rights deal, because Staples Center has named that arena. But you can do a naming rights deal where it's whatever you do, Nicole Holland, presented by XYZ Company. So you're giving them naming rights, and as a naming rights sponsor, they get their name on everything. So that's very valuable.
Fantastic. So, let's talk more about the media. So you're all about like double or triple your results with media. And so this includes the value that you're adding to the company, to the brand that's sponsoring you. So they're getting more bang for their buck. Yeah. And also more dollars in your pocket because you are adding more value. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And one of the strategies is to get your media sponsors first. You don't have to do that, but it's a really good strategy because, like I said, you may be starting out, you may have very low numbers, but with one media source, you may get 60,000 people, 75,000 people that you have what's called extended reach to. So one of the strategies that we use with our clients who are just getting started is media sponsors. And remember, traditional as well as the digital platform. So
Can I just
maybe, sure.
I just want to interrupt and ask you to qualify what is a media sponsor?
Oh, okay. A media sponsor is exactly the same as a cash sponsor, a corporate sponsor, but what the media sponsor does is they give you all kinds of media for free. And I'll give you an example about that. When I was first getting started, I had a terrestrial radio station as a sponsor, and I think they had 75,000 listeners. And what they did for me was they gave me 30-second commercials, 60-second commercials. They gave me sponsor spotlights. They gave me presence on their website. And I mean, I was driving and I heard my own commercial. I almost crashed the car. And they produced the commercial at absolutely no cost. What I did was I was on the phone. And since I was doing at that time the Women's Small Business Expo, I said, I want your top female talent, your most popular female talent at the station, and I want her to record the commercial. So we got on the phone, and they helped me write the script. They helped me do everything. I couldn't believe it. And she did 3 reads. I chose number 2, and then they added what's called bumper music, which is the music that you hear, in the beginning and at the end, and sometimes the undertone music. And it was a great commercial. And so they played that all the time, and it really got people to my event. And I leveraged. Here's what you could do. This is so cool. I leveraged those media sponsors to get the cash sponsors, because then I had what's called extended reach to all of the listeners of that station. And you know what I gave them in exchange? I gave them a booth at my at the Women's Small Business Expo, which didn't cost me anything because it's just airspace. Because radio stations, the traditional ones who have a license, they need to do a certain amount of public service work. They need to get out into the community to keep their license. So that's how a media sponsor can work for you. And basically, that was a $25,000 package that they gave me, but not a dime came out of my pocket.
Amazing. So, yeah, I'm just so curious about that. For folks who aren't doing something that's really community based and value based, is that still something that business owners and entrepreneurs can go after, even if it's not like per se an event that they're hosting?
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I know I've been talking about events because sponsors just love events because they can do a lot at an event. But you can do this spot, like I said, if you want to do virtual stuff. Sponsors are seeing a lot of viability right now in the podcast world. iHeartMedia, like the media giant out there, is doing its first podcasting awards in January. So they're really recognizing podcasting as legitimate, as growing, as cutting edge. So if you want to incorporate some of these things, like I said, into your podcast, into your video channel, whatever you want to do, you could usually do it virtually. Even like that, let's say that award presentation, you could do that virtually. Not, it doesn't have to be live. So a lot of these things you can also incorporate, even if you're not doing an event. And I want to let you know that think of the major social media out there. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Their whole business model is sponsorships, really, and they don't do live events. They live in the internet universe.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for that. Now, what about when we get a no? So we've pitched a sponsor, and I believe actually I kind of took you off track because I think we were going with number one. The first thing to do is sponsor proposal. Number two, then, is to contact the sponsor after writing the proposal. And then, is there something called a sponsor deck, or like what's the next thing that we have to do after contacting them?
Sure. Okay. The sponsor proposal is also called the sponsor deck. It's also called the prospectus. Sometimes it's called the opportunity overview. I just like to call it a proposal. So the first thing you do is to identify your sponsors. The second thing is to do that proposal. And then the third thing is negotiate those deals. So that's really the 3 steps to getting your sponsors.
So there then, when we're negotiating the deal and let's say we get the no, how can we turn that into an enthusiastic yes?
Oh, I've never gotten a no. Everybody said yes to me.
Never, right?
Of course you're
Never.
going to get no. Of course you're going to get some companies that say no. And well, so here's some ways to turn the no into a yes. First of all, you can ask that sponsor, say, well, can I ask why you're not moving forward? And sometimes they're going to tell you. Uh, Sometimes they're going to say, well, we don't think it's a match because of your demographics. We're not sure about this city, and sometimes it's a thing that you can fix. Like with one of my bank sponsors, they were about to pull out because they didn't like part of my program. And I said, well, if I, change that, can I resubmit? And they said, yeah, sure. And then I got a yes. So find out really what is the issue. And if it's something that you can fix, if it's something that you can change, say, can I resubmit? Most people, when they get that rejection, they're just so embarrassed. They walk away with their tail between their legs. They don't really ask, well, can I ask why you're not moving forward? And sometimes they'll really tell you the truth and say, well, it's because of this or this or this, and say, well, if I work on that, can we schedule another time to talk, and can I resubmit? And a lot of my clients have done exactly that. They've turned the no into a yes. Another way to turn a no into a yes is to go to another department in the company, because, large companies are not like us. They're, a lot of different departments. Sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So sometimes you can get a no from one department and a yes from another department. And since I know this is a question I get a lot, everybody says, well, what's the right department to go to in the company? And it is the marketing department. The marketing department is the right one. Now, it's not always marketing, but it's good to start there, because if it's not marketing, they will lead you to the right department. And that's how I got FedEx, because I didn't know a soul at FedEx. FedEx is a mature 50-year-old brand, thousands of employees all over the world. And basically, I just called and asked for the marketing department. I got passed around to a couple of people, but eventually I landed on the right guy who could greenlight the sponsorship. And they were also a multi-year, multi-contract sponsor who stayed with me for quite a few years. I like the marketing department. They usually have a good budget too.
So what is that question you ask when you do wind up getting the right person on the phone? What's the question, or how does that conversation start to even get them to consider you or think about you, or to find out if they're even at doing sponsorships?
Okay, well, that's good. Well, first of all, you want to make sure you're talking to the decision maker. You want to make sure they have time to talk to you, because a lot of people get nervous and they just start going into their presentation. And if that person doesn't have the time, they're not going to listen to you anyway. So let's assume we're talking to the right person. Let's assume that they do sponsorships, okay? The most important question to ask is, what are your marketing goals and how can I help you achieve them? I want you to make your first conversation with your sponsor a fact-finding expedition. I want you to make them open up to you about what their demographics are, what their upcoming campaigns are. You can find out what sponsorships they've done in the past and which ones were successful and which ones were not successful, because that tells you how they measure success. So I want you to ask them a bunch of questions and really get to how you can solve their problems and on your first conversation. If you feel you can do it, go into your presentation. But a lot of people don't even go into the presentation on the first conversation. They say, great, you've told me some great things. I want to come up with a custom program for you, and can we talk again? And that's a wonderful way to do it too.
Awesome. And I imagine then you would email the proposal, or you would just schedule a day to present the proposal.
Okay, here's what we need to have in our sponsor journey. Something that we grew up with called conversations. Remember I said sponsorship is a relationship business. So you want conversations. They create rapport. They create synergy. They create relationships. You want to have as many actual conversations as possible. If you can, go and meet with your sponsor in person, because you could go and meet with a sponsor, you could have lunch with them, an hour goes by, it's nothing, but you can't talk for an hour with your sponsor on the phone. They're just not going to give you that kind of time. You'll talk to your best friend for an hour, but you're not going to talk to your sponsor. So meet with the sponsor in person, and I've actually had clients fly out to meet with a potential sponsor if the deal was big enough. But at the very least, please talk to them on the phone and have a conversation. Don't do it all by email and text and all those things.
Perfect. So the first question then, before you ask them what their needs are and how you can help them, do you present yourself as, hi Joe, my name's so and so, and I'm interested in working with you, partnering with you through a sponsorship situation. I just wanted to find out these things. Like, how is that right? Or like, what is that first thing to introduce yourself even before you go, oh, let me ask you these questions about what are your needs and goals?
Okay. I always say make the sponsor the star. So, make it all about them. It's all about them. And if they if they know that you get that it's all about them, you're going to have a pretty good journey in sponsorships. So say, hey, I want to talk about how we can market and promote your brand. And in my case, it was to women business owners with a lot of purchasing power. It's a $6 trillion market out there, the women's business market. And how can I help you connect to that? And do some research, by all means, on your demographic, and do some research on the company that you're approaching, because sponsors really like it when you've done your homework. And it could take less than 5 minutes to do research on each company. You just look at their website, you look at their social media, maybe pull up a couple of articles, and you basically got something. So you could say, hey, I see that your company's doing this particular campaign now, and I would really love to talk to you about how we can expand your influence in that market and tap into these people with tremendous consumer needs and buying power, which is the people that I can bring to you. Can we talk? Does this sound like a good fit to you?
Linda, you are pure gold, and everything you share, it's like coins after coins after coins. So thank you for that. Before we wrap and before we tell our listeners where they can go to continue the conversation with you, is there anything I did not ask you about sponsorship that you think would be valuable to my listeners?
Yeah, I just want your listeners and viewers to just really hold their heads up high and know that they have quality, that they have value to offer their sponsors. My first sponsor was Bank of America. And I live in Los Angeles. And guess what? I was in a traffic jam and I was cursing that traffic jam. I was saying things I cannot even tell you right now. And I was so mad. But I look up, and when I look up, I see a billboard for Bank of America. And there's a woman on it. And remember, I was at that time I was doing the Women's Small Business Expo. And I said, oh my God, what if Bank of America could be a sponsor of mine? But then I went to my little home office and I said, they're not even going to talk to me. Well, who am I kidding? I'm going to make a fool out of myself. I'm going to fail, and I'm going to fail publicly. And I just don't really want that. So I pushed it down for about 2 weeks. But my mission was so strong to empower people. And I know that's your mission too, that I built up the courage to make that call. And I picked up that phone, and it looked like it weighed about 250 pounds. And I did call them. And I actually did go to see the guy at Bank of America. And at that time, I was driving this old clunker car. I mean, the paint was peeling. I had to park it 2 blocks down so nobody saw it. I put on my one good suit, and I was so nervous, Nicole. Thank God there was a desk between us. My knees were knocking in the meeting, and I showed him my proposal, and he says, okay, we're going to go for it, and it was the 5-figure deal. And I had to act like I did it all the time. And I said, great. And then he wants to shake my hand, and my hand was so sweaty. I secretly wiped my hand. I shook his hand. And then on the way home, I just waved to all the Bank of Americas, and, I did the happy dance. There's nothing like landing that first sponsor. And remember, I was selling something that didn't even exist. It existed in my little head between my ears, and that made it real because somebody believed in me. And, on my deathbed, I will be so proud of the work that I've done, and it's all because of corporate sponsors. So that's what I want to tell your listeners. Even if you're starting out, even if you think you really don't have anything at this point to offer your sponsors, check this out. It could be a real great way to go to empower people and fund your dreams.
Amazing. So you have a gift for my listeners, and if there's anything else you want to share about how my listeners and viewers, how my audience, how my people can get in touch with you and get more value, because I know I'm on the edge of my seat right now. We're going to have a conversation after. Yeah, if people want to continue the conversation, what do you want them to do?
I want them to go to my website. My website is sponsorconcierge.com, and I'll spell that for you. Sponsor, Sponsor, concierge, it's a French word, Concierge.com. When you go there in the upper right-hand corner, you can request the #1 secret to getting sponsors, and that is my free gift for everybody that's joined us today. I also do strategy sessions with people. I will talk to you one-on-one, and we'll see how we can really help you get sponsors, because we're all in different businesses here, but we're all in the life-changing business. And I know all of you out there want to change and transform people's lives, and this is a way to do it. So go to sponsorconcierge.com, request the #1 secret to getting sponsors. It's yours absolutely free. And then if you want to contact me, you can contact me through the website.
Brilliant. And of course, we'll have that link and the show notes. We're going to have some great takeaways. This was just a value packed interview. And so come on over to the Nicole Holland Show and check out the show notes. Again, you can see the video, and you can thank Linda personally in the comments. And man, just so good. I'm on such a high. Thank you, Linda, for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.